Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Sunday, February 16th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game is in 195 days. The game against Michigan in 286 days. If you are planning your next event, you should make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. The vibes are always great. We welcome back our friend Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Today we're going to be talking about the rest of the Ohio State wide receivers who are returning. We did the four guys who had some kind of substantial stats already. Now we're going to be looking at some of the newcomers and some of the guys who get a chance to really make a first impression during their second year this year. Tony, the first guy we're going to be talking about, former five-star wide receiver Mylan Graham. The talent is clearly there. You saw him kind of coming on and playing, a little bit more of a bigger role towards the end of the season. This feels, though, to me really like this is kind of his first season in Columbus, because when you show up in the summer, it basically kills your chance to contribute as a true freshman. I think Mylan Graham probably would have played a bigger role already if he had been a January enrollee last year instead of a June.
Yeah, and when a guy enrolls in June, like your best hope is that they could do the Chris Olave thing where they start to come on over the second half of the season. And he played in 4 games, and 2 of those were in the playoffs. Now, that's partly because of the blowouts against Tennessee and Oregon. But, I talked with Mylan at one of the bowl games, and he was talking about how when he got to Ohio State in June, things were going really well for him. And then practice started and it got a little bit more difficult, which is kind of how things go. But then you lean on your teammates, you fight through, and then you start to grow. And I asked Brian Hartline about it as well. And it's like, yeah, you could really start to see it about the second half of the season where he understood more of what he was doing and he wasn't questioning things as much anymore. And so the track that he's on right now, Hartline is really liking. And, when I talked to Mylan Graham back when he was a high schooler, he talked about how he could play slot or outside. Brian Hartline had talked to him about both of those things. And right now he's outside, but there's the possibility if he picks that up and is grasps it, then they can start to move him inside like they've done with Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka in the past. But yeah, this is not the deepest wide receiver room, and so they need Mylan Graham to step up and move up that depth chart and be a guy that has shown that he can be an incredibly impactful, dynamic guy with the ball.
Yeah, he did not have any catches last season, and neither did anyone else we're talking about in terms of returning scholarship players here. So this is all guys who get a second chance or a first chance to make a first impression this year with the ball in their hands. And there were only 4 guys we talked about on the last show, so there are going to be opportunities for the guys that we're talking about here. Next man up is DeMarion Whitten, and he's someone he has not really seen much of the field at all. But he's had kind of an interesting journey. He was recruited. The conversation when he was being recruited was he was a tight end, but they were going to maybe start him as a wide receiver. And it sounds like maybe the wide receiver thing is just going to kind of stick for him now.
Yeah, and he's another big-bodied wide receiver. I think did he tell you that wide receiver is just more fun than tight end? I can't remember if that was a conversation with you or somebody was like, yeah, it's just more fun at receiver than tight end, which you can understand if you've ever seen the 2 positions in action. But I still go back to the one game I saw of him as a Glenville Tar-Bloodder where I think he did not play in the first quarter for whatever reason. And I think Glenville was trailing like 3-0 after the first quarter. And then Ted Ginn Sr. inserts him into the lineup, and at halftime the score is 38-3 Glenville, something like that. And he just took over. He played safety, he played receiver, tight end, quarterback. He kicks, like he's just a really, really natural athlete and still kind of developing and growing into a guy that can be called upon and relied upon as a receiver, all of the routes and things like that, and the blocking that has to take place. So yeah, that's a guy I think gets pretty forgotten when you talk about the Ohio State receivers, but is a guy that they're still, just as high on as ever, especially now that he's solidified where he wants to be. And a lot of times, most times, it's once the player is all in on where they want to be, that's when the progression and the blossoming really takes place. Because as Ryan Day said, they're never going to move anybody that doesn't want to move positions. It has to be something they want to do. It also has to be something you want to do if you're staying somewhere. Like you've got to want to do it, and clearly he does. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. He's one of these guys that can make an impact early on in spring just based on the fact that he's going to get a ton of reps.
Someone else who could make an impact this spring is Quincy Porter, 5-star. He's out of Bergen Catholic High School, a big Northeast New Jersey powerhouse. My old neck of the woods. That is Taylor Ham country, Tony. None of this pork roll nonsense. Taylor Ham country in North Jersey. Got 2 North Jersey wide receivers in this class. Actually, we've got the other one a little bit later. Quincy Porter, though, 5-star wide receiver, big frame, big playability. Like, this is like, I think this is okay, go ahead. Like, this is not Jeremiah Smith. Adjust your expectations accordingly. This is not Jeremiah Smith. But by like normal non-superhuman standards, like this is the next wide receiver you can go ahead and get excited about at Ohio State.
Yeah, another 5-star signee for Brian Hartline, somewhere between a Marvin Harrison and a Jeremiah Smith. I don't know, but
Tony, be responsible.
But like that's the kind of the recruiting rankings that he has legitimately between Marvin Harrison and Jeremiah Smith. That's all I'm saying, Tom, the recruiting rankings. But is another, like you said, big-bodied guy, 6'3", 205 pounds, 6'4", somewhere around there, but can also do stuff after the catch. He's not just a possession receiver who's going to move chains. So, a guy that also, once Ohio State got in on, started climbing the recruiting rankings as well, but is a playmaker, and like I said, before the catch, after the catch, and a guy that go ahead and get excited about, but also realize it. Past 5-star receivers like Brandon Ennis and Mylan Graham took a year, but they didn't get in until June. Quincy Porter getting in the winter. Let's see what he can do in the spring and how quickly he can make some noise, Tom, because we'll always go back to seeing Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba as true freshmen in the spring and saying, okay, that's legitimately something. Marvin Harrison as well. And of course, Jeremiah Smith. Let's see if there another one can be added to that list.
Yeah, we have definitely seen that a number of times over the years, and I'm excited to see where he stands in that, because they don't need him to be an immediate impact guy, but if he can, potentially the reps will be there if he is ready to do that. I'm doing this sort of in order of star ranking. That's just because how I wrote these down. The next guy up is someone who is not probably going to be an immediate impact guy by any means, because he's a little bit more of a project. Bodpegn Miller, he is out of Ontario, Ohio. That's kind of up by Mansfield. He's someone who is really raw. He played quarterback in his high school team. He kind of did just a little bit of everything on his high school team. And so the receiver thing is going to be kind of new to him. He is potentially a really exciting prospect, but he's also someone who I think people should go into this year expecting you probably won't see a ton of him, as he kind of just learns how to be a wide receiver for a year or so. And then you see what you got, after that.
Yeah, not unlike DeMarion Whitten last year, guy who played a multitude of positions, and Bodpegn Miller played quarterback. He played corner. Like when they needed him to shut down the opponent's top receiver, they would put him on there, and he would do that. But a guy at quarterback who would rush for 1,000 yards and could run around and make plays. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of development that needs to take place, but and I talked with Brian Hartline about him as well at one of the bowl games, and recognizing early on that he could be a guy that could do something. And then he had been camping for a while. I think we saw on the day that he got offered, working out at a June camp and really impressing. And just you could tell he looks like a very tall receiver, which he is. He's legitimately 6'4", 6'3", 6'4". But, runs really well and cuts better than you would expect for a guy that big. And I think that's something that you could say of Quincy Porter as well. Like, they've got some really good athletic guys. But yeah, Bodpegn Miller, he understands it's going to take some time as well, which I think is a benefit for everybody. Like, he's not looking like Jeremiah Smith put up 1,300 yards. I'm thinking at least 1,400 for me. Like, he understands the process that it's going to take to get him to the point where he's ready to go.
The Buckeyes have pulled some talented receivers out of California over the years. Next one of those, 4-star receiver, 5-star hair, Phillip Bell out of Mission Viejo, California, Tony.
Yeah, and interestingly, when the early signing day, Ryan Day compared him to Emeka Egbuka as a guy who could play inside or outside, and they're very similar in size, 6'1", 195, 200 pounds, both of those guys. and he's a guy that is effective around in the red zone, and is a guy that can go up and get a ball, but also can run different kinds of routes. So this is one where does he end up where the need is greater in terms of the outside, the inside, probably, but can also move around. So it'll be one where they want to get him ramped up on where they see him right now, and then as he grasps that, then you can start to move him around. But I'm not sure if how much will be expected of him this year either. I think he's another possibility as a redshirt guy, but you can get your 4 games in, and then another 4 games or so in the playoffs if things go well.
And the last guy, and I've heard this name 2 different ways. It's either DZ Jones or DZ Jones. I've heard it both ways. Out of DePaul Catholic in Wayne, New Jersey. Also, Tony, a northern New Jersey guy, a little further out from the city, another 20 or so minutes out from New York, but still DePaul Catholic up in, I think that's Passaic County, not Bergen County, but still very much a North Jersey guy.
Pork roll guy or a Taylor ham guy?
Taylor ham country for sure, Tony.
Okay, that's fine. I would say this is the definite slot receiver of the class for Ohio State, and he's got some Jackson Smith and Jigba to him in terms of just inside route running and his ability to cut. So he's an entertaining watch. If you go check out his huddle tapes and videos, whatever you want to call them. But
VHS.
Yes. Go plug in the VCR, get your red cable and your yellow cable, and try to figure out which slots go in which. And then the white cable does nothing. But his ability to get open is pretty impressive, and so that's another guy that again, I don't know how much he's going to see the field this year, because they're pretty top heavy, which they were last year, so they didn't necessarily get too deep into the freshman class aside from the obvious, and I don't know that they'll need to do it. They could probably do the same this year, but they've got more options among the freshman class, I think, than they did last year. But yeah, Jones is a guy that can run routes on the inside and do it very well.
Yeah, that is not a bad position to be in, where you have a bunch of talented guys, but you don't need to rely on the young guys. You've got enough depth at the top, veteran guys coming back, that you don't need to throw those guys on the field before they're ready. If they're ready, great. If not, that's fine. You see them in 2026, and you see them in, some of those early games. And, if you're ready by the end of the year, great. If not, that's fine. Next year will work as well. So, but before we get to next year, we got to go through this year. There's a lot of exciting stuff about to happen in Columbus. Well, starting today, basketball, Buckeyes hosting Michigan on Sunday. We'll have coverage from the shot of that. But then once basketball season's over, boy, this spring football is coming. We've got that schedule for you earlier in the week and did a whole show about when that's all going to be happening right after spring break. And then the spring game, or whatever is substituting for a spring game this year, coming up on April 12th. And it should be a really, really fun and interesting spring ball, because there's a lot of new faces and a lot of positions up for grabs, and some new coaches as well. It's going to be a very eventful spring, and we hope to share that spring with you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well, all to make you a smarter football fan. That's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.